Good morning, Eastern North Carolina. I am Emily McAllister, and I'm back. You cannot get rid of me that easily. But this is the second episode of The Current. This is being filmed live, and the recorded version will be available later this afternoon. And I have spent the last several years building a platform online that is exclusively focused in Eastern North Carolina, promoting things that are happening in Greenville, advocating for Greenville, highlighting events and meeting people and talking to business owners about their challenges in opening businesses and keeping them open, and all of the regulations and different things that we want to bring into town. And I have heard everything under the sun about what we're doing, what we're not doing, what we should have, things like sports tourism and entertainment venues, mega sites, economic development, and the opinions range from we should have none of these things to we should have all of these things, and everywhere in between. And all of the comments online and in person really have the same underlying theme, which is there is a lack of understanding amongst the public regarding the process with which economic development happens. How do we bring these things into town, and what does it look like as far as growth? How all of these cogs fit together, and they link and intertwine, and they turn each other from the university to the hospital to our school system. And overall, most people don't have the time or the desire to learn how all of those things influence each other. And it's not that they're stupid, it's not that they don't want to know, it's that there's not a place that you can go and get a concise explanation for these things in a way that bypasses all of the legal mumbo jumbo and economic terms. That we don't want to talk about things in that way. We just want to have a conversation. And I want to be able to provide that for Eastern North Carolina. The news outlets report on the facts. They explain what has happened, not why or how it happened. And I've said for many, many years that the city of Greenville and Pitt County needs a liaison to help bridge the gap between the people that make the decisions and the people that abide by the decisions. I said that for the very first time publicly when downtown Greenville implemented the paid parking, because I am a very logical person, and the paid parking thing at the time seemed so illogical that my first thought is there must be something here that I don't understand. There must be some piece of information that I am not privy to, or that I'm just not seeing, that would make all of this fit together in a way that does make sense. And I want to be that missing piece for the residents of Eastern North Carolina. If I don't know the answer, I will try to find it. I made several calls earlier this week digging for some answers, and was very surprised when I was met with the no comment and the immediate hang up, no comment, immediate hang up. That really shocked me. And I understand why people take that position, because I think a lot of people may interpret what I'm trying to do here as like some sort of gotcha, like I'm trying to expose something that people don't know is happening. And that's not really the case. I genuinely do not want to unearth some sort of deep state conspiracy in the eastern part of North Carolina. I just want to understand why we're doing what we're doing and help educate other people why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that's a very valid and appropriate request, not just of me, but of anybody that resides here. And I think that's a very fair thing to want to know the answer to. When I first started selling real estate, someone said to me that the more educated a person is, the more educated a client is, the more difficult they are to sell. And I really struggle with that because I understand the concept, which is that educated people are harder to manipulate, they are much harder to influence, and they are independent thinkers. And I don't operate that way. I'm a very principled person. And so my sales strategy when it comes to being in the real estate business has always just been, I'm going to educate you on what your options are, educate you on the potential outcome of those options, and then give you the space to make the decision that's best for you. And I want to apply that same strategy into this show and just the greater concept of ENC TV, which is I'm going to present you the information, educate you on what the information means, and then allow you to come to a decision on what you feel like is appropriate or the right thing. And then I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm happy to give my opinion when people ask for it, and sometimes when people don't ask for it. But I believe wholeheartedly, like one of my very core principles is that honesty and transparency that are proactive breed compassion and understanding. And if the residents of Pitt County and Eastern North Carolina had a better understanding of how things work, then we could do a better job of how to work together to get the things that we want. And so that is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to research some things. I might find something I don't want to find. Hopefully I'll find things that I do want to find. And the ultimate goal of all of it is to filter all of that information into the things that, in a way that is easy to understand. You can get the Cliff Notes highlights version so that you don't have to sit through the meeting minutes of the Winterville City Council meeting or read through every agenda packet for planning and zoning. I do that because I'm a psychopath and because I'm just that nosy. Most people don't want to do that, but that is the goal, and to give you all of those things without the junk and the legal and political jargon that clutters up your feed. So without further ado, I'm fixing to learn y'all something about strategic plans, comprehensive land use plans, and how they work for the municipalities, because I got this message from a viewer a couple of weeks ago asking what my opinion was on a decision that the Winterville City Council made to rezone a parcel at the intersection of Vernon White Road and Railroad Street. So this parcel is sandwiched between Waterford Subdivision, which is off of Vernon White Road, and Railroad Street. It's a very long, skinny parcel. And the residents at Waterford have been very vocal that they do not want this parcel, that where it says Railroad Street Extension. They do not want that parcel rezoned from agricultural use to residential use. And the question that I was given or proposed was essentially, if the residents have been vocal that they don't want it, why was it approved anyway? Because it feels as if we, as constituents, vote these people in specifically to represent our best interest, and they vote against the things that we want anyway. So what is the purpose of all of this? And the Cliff Notes version is this. The town of Winterville has a future land use plan that they spent thousands of dollars, of taxpayer dollars, developing, that outlines the appropriate and desired use of that parcel is medium density housing. And if they deny the rezoning request without a legitimate and rational explanation, they open themselves up to potential litigation. So virtually every municipality all across the state and country has one of these land use plans. Sometimes it's called a comprehensive land use, comprehensive strategic plan, future land use map, something of that nature. The city of Greenville has one that was drafted in 2016. It's called Horizons 2026. It was drafted, it was a 10-year plan. And under normal circumstances, a municipality would bring in a third-party firm to help draft these plans, and they do preliminary research on all of the infrastructure in the city. Where do they want the city to grow? What do they want the city to look like? These plans, I think the Horizon 2026 plan is like 250 some odd pages long. They include photos of what they want the architecture to look like, where are they going to put parks and bike paths and sidewalks and future school locations. Everything is in there. And one of the things that they do is that they consult the public. They hold public forums and do surveys, and they take public input when they draft these future land use plans. And so when the town of Winterville drafted this future land use plan that was implemented in October of 2019, the municipality said an appropriate and desired use of this parcel is categorized as something called urban neighborhood. And that definition is primarily medium-sized single-family lots, but with the potential for attached residential homes. So there could be townhomes here, and this is as many as 3 to 8 dwellings per acre. So when a developer looks at investing in a specific area, you obviously can't request rezoning for a parcel that you don't own. You can't do permitting. You can't do any of that. So the developers and the investors look at these comprehensive land use maps as a way to guide them for how to invest in a specific area. This developer wants to build a subdivision. He wants to build this kind of subdivision. He acquired this property because the town of Winterville says that they also want him to build this kind of subdivision there. And so when the residents of Waterford come in and say, well, we don't want this here, and the city council votes to approve it anyway, it feels like your opinion maybe isn't being considered, but it is in the sense that what is being developed on this parcel is the lowest density that the city says that it wants. So that definition was anywhere from 3 to 8 residential units per acre, which means that on this particular plot, which equals out to be a little over 14 and a half acres, there could be as many as 100 townhomes up and down that tiny sliver of land. But what was approved and what was proposed was a development for approximately 3 single-family detached units per acre, 8,000 square foot lots, 2-car garages, minimum 1,800 square feet, in a way that is meant to be as harmonious as possible with the neighboring residents, and so as not to go in somewhere and overwhelm the infrastructure, overwhelm the stormwater drain, overwhelm the traffic, all of those things. So there is some level of compromise here. It's just not the level of compromise that most people would necessarily desire. All of that to say, my opinion is, yes, it should have been approved. It should have been approved 3 years ago when a different developer owned this property and requested to rezone it. Why? Because the comprehensive land use maps state that the municipality wants this kind of development here. And I know that there's concerns specifically. I went and watched all of the meeting minutes from the Town of Winterville meeting. It was a 4.5-hour meeting during which they discussed this particular issue, and heard everyone's complaints about stormwater and traffic and neighborhood characteristics, preserving the character of the neighborhood. And those are all legitimate points of concern, but when the plans are drafted for comprehensive land use, all of those things are researched preliminarily. There is not full engineered of every individual parcel in the land use plan, but it is research preliminarily to say this parcel can accommodate this type of construction. And then when permitting and all of those types of things take place, there will be additional requirements regarding stormwater. For example, this neighborhood has to have a retention pond that's already drafted in their engineering plans. Traffic, people complain about traffic. I think what a lot of people don't understand is that just because traffic is inconvenient does not mean that it is unsafe. The DOT has categorizations for how many trips per day every road can handle. And virtually every time I've heard complaints about traffic, the DOT categorization for how many trips that road can handle, we're still only like 40% capacity for what that road is meant to deal with. So is it annoying? Sure. But that is part of living in a growing and desirable city. So we can't just all willy-nilly be making decisions. The time for you as a resident of any municipality to voice your concerns about what kind of development you do or do not want next to your neighborhood is when your city is drafting their comprehensive land use plan. It's not to say that things can't be changed or that the comprehensive land use plan is the end-all be-all, but it is the guideline with which municipalities make the decision on whether or not to approve certain rezoning requests and certain development projects. So if you don't want a residential neighborhood to go next to you, you have to get in when they're drafting the land use plan and saying, I do not want this particular lot to be this particular land use. They do all kinds of outreach program when they're drafting those plans. It probably will also require a little bit of proactive research from you as a citizen to know when they're drafting the plans. But that is the time to really get involved and to say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. Imagine if the alternative was just every city council across the United States was just making decisions on approvals or denials based off of how they felt that day or based off of what the neighbors had to say about it. That would be a complete nightmare. It's not reasonable. Land use plans are also why the Sawyer's Fun Park project has repeatedly been denied. So everybody saw very recently that the Sawyer's Fun Park project was brought to the Greenville City Council. This is sort of a unique situation because, the Greenville Planning and Zoning Board, not Greenville City Council. It is scheduled to go Greenville City Council in August. This parcel is not located in the Greenville city limits, but it is bordered by Greenville city limits on both sides, on east and west, and it is bordered also by Winterville city limits. So you have this situation where you have multiple municipalities and the county all kind of running into each other to decide what to do. Obviously, they have been trying to get this rezoned for several years, and up until this point, they have been pursuing rezoning through the county, through to a rezoning that is general commercial. I have been very vocal about my support for this project, but I agree with the fact that the county should not have approved it general commercial because we are a system of precedent, and that is not a good precedent to set, especially in an exclusively residential area. But now the city of Greenville has gotten involved, and that's probably very confusing for people that are not familiar with the legal pathway for how this kind of things works. But last episode, I talked about something called a UDO, or a Unified Development Ordinance, that the city of Greenville has very recently adopted and implemented for the city limits. And within that UDO is a brand new zoning called Conditional Commercial zoning, which is different from general commercial in all of the ways that it says. It is a conditional commercial zone categorization that is conditional on a very specific type of facility with very specific hours, very specific architecture, all kinds of stipulations on what you can and can't do there. So it's not a situation of, well, I've gotten a commercial zoning and now I'm not going to build Sawyer's Fun Park, I'm going to go build a gas station. You can't do that. And so in an effort to pursue this opportunity, Sawyer's Fun Park has requested to be annexed into the city of Greenville so that they can have access to some of these different things. Well, the annexation request is not being heard until August, but the rezoning request was heard a couple of weeks ago, which was denied, which is what has been all over the news. And it was denied because it does not match the comprehensive land use plans. And in all the same ways that a developer can come in and say, well, I'm going to potentially sue the municipality because they're not honoring the land use plans, residents can also come in and say, I'm going to potentially sue the municipality because they're not honoring the land use plans. There is one legal option left for Sawyer's Fun Park to pursue to get approval for this project. The planning and zoning denied the rezoning request, but there is one item left, and that is through something called a special use permit. In the UDO, which is essentially a very large table of all of the different zonings that the city of Greenville has to offer, rural residential allows the Sawyers, to construct any indoor facility, recreational facility, by right. The city has to allow him to do it. Rural residential zoning, which is what that parcel currently is, will also allow for outdoor recreational facilities to be constructed with a special use permit. So as of right now, what is happening is there is pursuit still to request that that parcel be annexed into the city in conjunction with a special use permit being issued for them to build that facility on that particular lot. That is, to the best of my understanding, really kind of the end of the road for this project. If it is not approved via that pathway, I don't see a way that it would be approved. I don't know if there are any other options for pursuit at the state level that would potentially overturn some sort of decision like that. I have heard rumors of that, but I don't know that to be the case. I said in the beginning, I'm a very logical person, and it has always seemed very illogical to me that if there is a legal pathway that protects the city's ability to approve this project, why they would not. Because it is very common knowledge that growth is happening in that direction in Greenville. Worthington Road, it is not an if, it is a when it becomes a five-lane road. Worthington, from the intersection at the intersection at Ivy. The intersection at Ivy, all the way down to the intersection at Old Tar Road. Mark my words, within the next 15 years, you will see that project show up on the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Project, to widen that road. 1,000 feet east of Sawyer's Fun Park, on the east side of Worthington Road, is already zoned general commercial by the county. It borders a recreational facility. I can't understand why we would not approve it other than the pushback from the neighbors. And while obviously the neighbors' opinions should be considered, I don't know that that would necessarily be enough to deter the city from approving this project, especially knowing that the city has been told that the parcel in between Sawyer's Fun Park and Corey Ridge, the Sawyers would be willing to donate that parcel to the city specifically for the construction of an indoor volleyball recreational facility in order to host tournaments. I know that that is a need. I know that ECJBC has outgrown their facilities and is looking for bigger opportunity for them to host more girls and more tournaments. We lose volleyball tournaments to Rocky Mount and Wilson all the time because they have facilities that are more equipped than we do to host those kind of things. And I know that the city has a vested interest in increasing the sports tourism in our town. And so there's a missing piece there. I have a theory on what that missing piece is. So I'm very curious to see how this goes in August with the annexation request and the special use permit request, because the pathway to approval requires 2 yeses. They have to approve the annexation request and they have to approve the special use permit. I'll be happy to share my theory on what I think is going on as far as bigger picture that I may be missing after the decision is made to annex and to issue the special use permit. But that just doesn't seem logical to me. And the whole conversation about right project, wrong location, do I understand it to some extent? Yes. But it brings me to a new segment that I'm going to call The Well. And the last episode I said, a lot of people are going to say, Emily, it's not that deep. I think it's always that deep. I think most things are always that deep. And there really is an underlying principled conversation here when we're talking about whether or not to approve this project, not socially, not talking about land use maps, if there is a legal pathway to approve the project, but the only thing that is hindering us from doing so is the discontentment of the neighbors. The underlying conversation is a difference in principle and value. And a very good friend of mine told me not so long ago that anytime I meet a politician, I should ask them, what do you want to accomplish and what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? Because that's such just a concise and brilliant explanation for the way the world works. You cannot have anything without some level of sacrifice. Somebody has to concede. Somebody has to lose. And in this scenario, you have two options. Either the neighbors concede or the owner of a business concedes. If he has to sell his land and go somewhere else and construct this project, he is conceding, he is sacrificing. If the neighbors have to live with a recreational facility next door, they are conceding, they are sacrificing. So the deeper question that I think a lot of people are having, or conversation that a lot of people are having in the Facebook comments and at the Little League ballpark and at the bar, is not if this is a good project for Greenville or should this be approved. It's should the discomfort of what is ultimately few supersede the greater benefit of having this facility in Greenville. And I want to be very careful here because we are standing literally on the precipice of the greater good argument. And I am not of the opinion that the needs of the few should be sacrificed for the needs of the many, especially not across the board. But I do think that somebody has to give. And every single time we bring in new industry or new development or new policy, it doesn't matter. There is going to be some level of discomfort or some level of inconvenience, and somebody has to pay the piper. And so the conversation that we're having is the degree to which that payment is made and how many people have to make it. How many people is too many people to pay a small price in exchange for benefit? Is there a degree with which this is too high of a payment for even one person to make in exchange for benefit? I don't know the answer to that question. I have an opinion in this particular scenario that I think is not a secret. I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all question or answer to that question. I'm just pointing out that this is really the conversation that we're having, because surface level, when people are seeing denied, 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 all people are seemingly hearing, minus all of the legal things happening behind the scenes, is that we are allowing the very loud voices of a few neighbors to discourage us from accepting and creating a pathway for a project that we all agree would be good for the town to have. My opinion in this scenario is that the price that you're asking the neighbors to pay is very minimal, and one that should not supersede the approval of this project. I'm probably going to get eaten alive for that opinion. That's totally fine. It's not the first time. It will definitely not be the last. But at least I'm not up here telling you that nobody has to sacrifice and nobody will be inconvenienced, because that's bullshit and that's a straight up lie. Every single time something like this happens, somebody has to pay the piper. That's just the way that this is going to work. So while we're on the topic of my opinion, it is my personal opinion that if you live anywhere in Ayden, Winterville, Greenville, or Eastern Pines, and there is an empty lot next to you, you better be fully prepared for that empty lot to be developed, not into R20 single-family homes on half-acre lots, okay? That's not what you're going to get. You are going to get medium to high-density housing, townhomes, quarter-acre single-family homes, mixed-use development. That is what you are going to get, especially if you are in the city limits. Unfortunately, we have reached a point as a town that if you want to be out in the sticks, you better pack it up and move to Grifton. You better pack it up and move to Chocowinity. And don't go to Bethel, because the mega site is happening, and that side of the county will explode over the next 15 to 20 years. That doesn't seem like a long time, but if you pack all your shit up and move to Bethel thinking that you're going to live there until the day you die and nobody is going to build something beside you, you're going to be pissed when you're 65 and next door they're building apartments. Don't do that. Go far enough out that you're not going to be encroached on in this lifetime with development. So that's what I have to say about that. Which brings us to our last segment, which is the one I'm always most excited about. Let's argue. Because speaking of theories, I have a theory for if they don't approve Sawyer's Fun Park, I have a theory for why they may not do that. That really has nothing to do with what the neighbors have to say. Speaking of theories, I also have a theory about Toy Story 5. Eric and I took our children to go see this opening weekend, and I thought it was super cute. I saw a lot of mixed reviews online, some people thinking it was great, some people that thought it was, a money grab or whatever. They did the preview for live action Moana, which I hate. I hate live action movies. I think that's horrible, but sequels in movies I can tolerate so long as they're done well. But my theory for Toy Story 5 is that the messaging in this movie was really not for the children. It was for parents. And what technology and tablets and personal devices run the risk of doing to our children. And I looked at Eric like 3/4 of the way through the movie, and I was like, why are they not taking this damn tablet from this kid yet? Like, what is happening? And I find it very ironic that we as a society have evolved into not giving our kids any level of independence, like physically. Like, we don't let them wander the neighborhood. We don't let them go explore our local recreational park or whatever. I think a lot of kids are not allowed to leave their yard without an adult present. There's very little physical independence in their day-to-day, but we hand them these personal devices and there's little oversight. They have all the independence in the world right here in their hand and no independence physically going out and doing things. That seems very, very backwards to me. And I remember hearing a while ago somebody say that asking a 2-year-old to stop having a tantrum is basically like asking a 7 or 8-year-old to go drive a car. Like they physically, cognitively, emotionally do not have the ability to do that without some sort of assistance. And I think the same goes for the responsibility of this in the hands of a small child. They do not have the ability to recognize when they've come across something that they shouldn't. They don't have the ability. An 8-year-old struggles, I think, in a social setting, learning what's okay to say, what's a joke, what's being received as a joke. You have to be able to stand in front of somebody and see this is their body language, this is their tone. We as adults have hard enough time interpreting text messages and what does this actually mean? What was the intent here? And to give a child a way to communicate that way with their peers and expect them to also be able to navigate and interpret it, I don't think is reasonable. So my position here is that elementary age children don't have any business with any device to any true degree. And I know that there's going to be all kinds of people that say, well, what about this or what about that? You know, I'm separated from my ex-husband and I want to be able to get in touch with my kid and I want to talk to them while they're at school and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not talking about those very specific scenarios. I am talking about just in general, hey, we're at the house. Here's your lily pad. Go sit in your bedroom and talk to your 4 friends and be visibly upset and distraught, and then let me not intervene. That is what I'm referencing. I think that a lot of parents use tablets and devices as a pacifier to quell some of the noise and the incessant questions and the movement that comes along with kids. And I think that we're doing them a disservice. And I would liken handing an elementary age child a personal device, specifically that has internet access and messaging capabilities to God knows who, to letting them walk around with a bomb. You would not let your child walk around with a bomb without very, very intense oversight. Hopefully we wouldn't let them do that at all. But I think that a lot of people make the mistake of thinking this is going to make my life easier. And in reality, as a parent, giving this to your kid makes your job exponentially harder because it requires constant and vigilant supervision. And I am not ashamed to admit that one of the reasons we do not have this in my house is because I don't want to deal with that shit. I'm lazy. I do not want to supervise the chats and the YouTube kids and the knockoff Walmart brand TikToks. I don't want to do all of that. And I am of the opinion that the benefit here does not outweigh the risk of having a portal to the outside world infiltrate my house. That is just my position. I'm sure very many people are going to disagree with me. Some people will probably agree with me. But that's what I have to say about that. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Current. Comments, questions, thoughts, concerns, feel free to leave them below. If you have something that you want me to cover, if you have a question about something that is happening in and around town, you can send me a Facebook message, an Instagram message. You can send me an email at emily@emilymcallister.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.